The ship appeared on the 10th day. Day 1 saw it first as a bright spot in the orange sky growing larger. His heart jumped with mixed feelings. Joy that they would be rescued. Fear about what rescue meant for him and Ari. Ari sensed his tension. She pressed against his leg, looking up at the sky with curious eyes. She did not understand what the ship meant, but she trusted Day 1. The rescue ship landed 100 meters from the crash site, its engines kicking up dust and ash. It was a Union Ranger vessel, bigger than Day 1's destroyed cargo ship. The symbol on its side meant Official Galactic Authority. The door opened and figures in environmental suits emerged. One of them pulled off his helmet, revealing a familiar face. Tae-young, Day 1's old military friend, now a Union Ranger. His eyes went wide when he saw Day 1. "You're alive." Tae-young ran forward and grabbed Day 1 in a careful hug, mindful of obvious injuries. "You idiot. We've been searching for 10 days. When we finally picked up your beacon." He stopped, noticing Ari hiding behind Day 1's leg. What is that?" "Her name is Ari," Day 1 said firmly, putting a protective hand on her head. "She's with me." Tae-young blinked. Then he called back to the ship. "We need the xenobiologist out here." And medical, obviously. More people came out of the ship. A medical team rushed to Day 1, scanning him with devices and speaking in concerned voices about broken bones and infection. Day 1 let them work but kept Ari close. She was frightened by all the new people, her scales shifting rapidly through different colors. A woman approached slowly, her movements careful and non-threatening. She wore the insignia of a xenobiologist. Her name tag read Dr. Bora. "Hello," she said softly, kneeling to be less intimidating. "I'm Bora. I study different species. May I look at your friend?" Day 1 translated the intent for Ari with gestures. Ari looked at him uncertain. He nodded encouragingly. Slowly, Ari stepped forward, letting Dr. Bora scan her with a device. Dr. Bora's eyes widened as she read the results. "This is a Velthine cub, indigenous to Velros 9, but they're not supposed to leave their packs, and she has—" The doctor looked up at Day 1 with astonishment. "She has a pack bond marker in her biology, but it's bonded to you?" "We survived together," Day 1 said. "We protected each other. We became pack." "That's impossible," Dr. Bora whispered. "Velthine only pack bond with their own species. The biological markers shouldn't even recognize an alien as potential pack. This has never been documented." Tae-young stood next to Day 1, looking at Ari with new respect. "What happened down here?" As they transported Day 1 and Ari to the ship, he told the story. The crash the first night, the cold and the predators. How Ari saved him from the attacking creatures. How he taught her about fire. How they learned to communicate. The hunters who came for her, and how they stood together against them. By the time he finished, they were in the ship's medical bay. Doctors were treating his injuries while Ari sat on the bed next to him, refusing to move more than an arm's length away. Tae-young was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Day 1, this is unprecedented. A human and a Velthine bonded like pack. But there's a problem." Day 1's stomach sank. "What problem?" "Galactic Union law," Dr. Bora said gently. She had been examining Ari more thoroughly. Ari is a juvenile from an uncontacted species. Well, minimally contacted. We have to return her to her people, to her biological pack. It's the law, designed to protect species from cultural contamination. "No," Day 1 said flatly. "She stays with me." "I understand your feelings," Dr. Bora continued. "But think about Ari. She has a people, a culture, a heritage. She deserves to know where she comes from, to be raised by her own kind, learning her own ways." Day 1 looked at Ari. She was watching them talk, not understanding the words but sensing the tension. He thought about what was best for her, not what he wanted. He thought about his sister Hyojin. She had dedicated her life to respecting alien cultures, to making sure humans did not impose their will on other species. She would say that Ari deserved to know her people. It hurt more than any physical injury, but Day 1 knew what he had to do. "Okay," he said quietly. "We take her back to her people. But I want to be there. I want to make sure she's safe." Tae-young put a hand on his shoulder. "Of course." Over the next hours, as the ship broke orbit and headed back down to Velros 9's surface, Dr. Bora ran more scans and asked questions. She was documenting everything about the unprecedented bond between human and Velthine. "This is remarkable," she said. "The pack bond is real and strong. Breaking it could cause psychological harm to both of you. Can't break it then, Day-One said, though his voice was hollow. He knew they would separate anyway. The galaxy had rules. Ari had been quiet, sensing something was wrong. Now she climbed into Day-One's lap and made questioning chirps. Day-One had to tell her. Using the signs and sounds they had developed together, he explained that she would be going back to her people, to her real family, that he could not come with her. Ari's reaction broke his heart. She clung to him, making distressed sounds. Her scales turned almost white with fear and sadness. She kept repeating the words she had learned. Friend, friend, friend. Yes, friend, Day-One said, his voice rough. Always friend. But you need your family. Your real family. That night, in his assigned quarters on the ship, Day-One could not sleep. Ari was in his room too. Dr. Bo-Ra had allowed it, seeing how distressed the cub became when separated from him. She curled against him like she had every night on Velros 9, but neither of them could rest. Day-One thought about the past 10 days. How had this small alien become so important to him? How had he become so important to her? He had started by just trying to keep her alive. Somewhere along the way, she had become more than a responsibility. She had become family. He thought about his sister again. Hyojin had died because he made a selfish choice, putting money before family. Now he was being asked to make an unselfish choice, putting Ari's needs before his own wants. I'm trying, Hyojin, he whispered into the darkness. I'm trying to do the right thing this time. Ari stirred in her sleep, making small, distressed sounds. Day-One stroked her scales gently until she settled. The next morning, they received news. A Velthine settlement had been located. The Mountain Ridge Pack, Ari's original pack, or what was left of it. The war between packs had been devastating. Many had died. We're preparing to make contact, Tae-Young told Day-One. We'll use translation devices. You can tell them about Ari, about what happened. Day-One nodded. He felt numb. This was it. The end of their time together. As the ship descended toward the Velthine settlement, Day-One held Ari and tried to memorize everything about her. The way her scales shifted colors with her mood, the sound of her purr, the trust in her eyes when she looked at him. I'm going to miss you, kid, he said softly, more than you know. Ari looked up at him and pressed her small hand against his chest over his heart. Then she pressed her head to the same spot. It was her way of saying she understood, that she would miss him too. The ship landed near the Velthine settlement. Through the viewport, Day-One could see figures moving. Larger versions of Ari watching the ship with cautious curiosity. Ready? Tae-Young asked. Day-One took a deep breath. No, he was not ready. He would never be ready, but he had to do this. Let's go, he said. He picked up Ari and carried her toward the exit. She clung to him, not understanding why they were here, but trusting him to keep her safe. That trust made everything harder. The door opened and Day-One stepped out onto Velros 9 for what he thought would be the last time. The air was hot and dry, familiar now after 10 days of breathing it. In the distance, the Velthine settlement waited. One of the figures separated from the group and began walking toward them. An older Velthine, his scales scarred and graying, but his bearing strong and dignified. He stopped a respectful distance away and spoke in the Velthine language. Dr. Bo-Ra's translation device crackled to life. I am Soharak, elder of the Mountain Ridge Pack. You have something that belongs to us. Day-One looked down at Ari one more time. Then, with the hardest motion he had ever made, he set her down on the ground. Her name is Ari, he said through the translator. She's brave, smart, and stronger than she looks. Take care of her. Ari looked up at him, confusion and fear in her eyes. She did not understand why he was leaving her. Go on, kid, Day-One said, his voice breaking. Go to your grandfather. Go home. But Ari did not move. She stood there, between Day-One and Soharak, between human and Velthine, between two worlds. And she began to cry. On the 7th day, Day-One finally got the distress beacon working. It was weak, flickering on and off, and would only broadcast for a few seconds every hour. But it was broadcasting. The signal was going out into space, crying for help. Someone might hear it. Someone might come. Day-One sat back from his repair work, exhausted but satisfied. His tools were scattered around him, pieces of the ship's guts spread across the ground. His hands were covered in grease and dried blood from cuts he did not remember getting. Ari danced around the beacon, chirping excitedly. She did not understand what it did, but she understood that Day One was happy and that made her happy too. "We did it, kid," Day One said, wiping his hands on his torn pants. "Now we just wait. Help will come." But help was not the only thing the signal attracted. That evening, as the sun began to set, Ari suddenly went rigid. Her scales turned dark gray, almost black. She made a sound Day One had never heard before, a low growl that vibrated in her chest. "What is it?" Day One asked, instantly alert. He grabbed his pipe and stood up. Ari was looking toward the rocky hills to the east. Her whole body was tense, ready to run or fight. Whatever she sensed, it terrified her. Then Day One saw them. 3 figures moving across the rocks. They moved like Ari, but were much, much larger, adults of her species. They were muscular and powerful, their scales dark red and black. They moved with the confidence of apex predators. "Your people?" Day One asked quietly. Ari made a negative chirp. Then she drew quickly in the dirt. She drew herself small and scared. She drew these large figures with open mouths, attacking. These were not her family. These were enemies. Day One's blood ran cold. The beacon had not just called rescue. It had called attention from local predators. And these predators were smart enough to investigate unusual signals. "We need to move," now Day One said. But it was too late. The 3 figures had seen them. They changed direction, moving straight toward the camp. Day One grabbed his pack of essential supplies. He took Ari's hand and pulled her toward the shipwreckage. If they could get inside, they might be able to defend the narrow entrance. But the large aliens were fast, much faster than him. Within minutes, they had surrounded the camp. Day One and Ari stood back to back near the fire, ready for a fight they could not win. The largest of the 3 stepped into the firelight. He was massive, at least half again as big as Day One, with plates of natural armor across his shoulders and back. His eyes glowed bright orange in the firelight. When he spoke, it was in a language of growls and chirps that Day One could not understand, but the meaning was clear. He was the hunter. They were the prey. Ari responded in the same language, her voice high and scared but defiant. The large alien laughed, a harsh sound. He said something else and gestured toward Ari. He wanted her. She was the target. Day One was just something in the way. "You're not taking her," Day One said firmly. He shifted his stance, putting himself completely between Ari and the hunters. The large alien looked at Day One with what might have been amusement. He said something to his companions and they laughed. Then he took a step forward. Day One did not wait. He had been planning for this moment since he realized they might be attacked by intelligent hunters. He had spent the last 2 days setting traps around the camp using the last of his ship's fuel cells. He dove to the side and hit a trigger he had buried in the ground. An explosion of fire and force erupted between him and the hunters. It was not enough to kill them, but it threw them back and created a wall of flame. "Run!" Day One yelled at Ari. They sprinted toward the rocky area where Day One had set his other traps. The hunters recovered quickly. They were warriors, trained and experienced. They split up, trying to flank their prey. But Day One had grown up in Earth's military. He knew tactics. He knew how to use terrain. He triggered a second trap as one hunter got close. Rocks fell from above, creating a barrier. He used fire to create smoke screens. He made noise in one direction while moving in another. Every dirty trick, every survival technique he had ever learned, he used now. Ari helped, using her small size and camouflage to confuse the hunters. She would appear on one side, chirp to get attention, then disappear into the rocks before they could reach her. But there were 3 of them, and only 2 of his group. The hunters were stronger, faster, and better adapted to this world. Eventually, they would win. The large hunter, who Day One started thinking of as the leader, cornered him near a cliff edge. The other 2 had Ari trapped behind some rocks. This was it. This was the end. The leader raised his arm. A blade extended from his forearm, a natural weapon that looked sharp as steel. He spoke again in his language, something that might have been a warrior's salute before a kill. Day One gripped his pipe, knowing it was useless but unwilling to die without fighting. Then Ari did something incredible. She burst from her hiding place and placed herself between Day One and the leader. She was tiny compared to the massive warrior, like a kitten facing a tiger. But she stood tall, her scales flaring bright red, and released a roar. It was high-pitched and young, but it was the roar of her species, a challenge and a claim. She was claiming Day One as her pack. She was saying that to hurt him, the leader would have to go through her. The leader stopped. Confusion crossed his face. He looked at Ari, then at Day One, then back at Ari. He spoke to her, his tone questioning. Ari responded, her voice stronger now. She gestured to Day One, to the fire, to the camp. She was telling the story of their survival, Day One realized. She was explaining their bond. The leader was clearly struggling with what he saw. In his culture, in his understanding of the world, this should not be possible. A young cub and an alien creature working together, protecting each other. It went against everything he knew. Day One saw his chance. While the leader was distracted, he triggered his last trap. A massive pillar of flame erupted between them, fueled by the last of his chemical accelerants. It was not an attack meant to kill. It was a statement, a wall, a boundary. She chose me. Day One yelled over the roar of the flames. I chose her.
We are pack.
You want her, you go through me. And I'm from Earth, you understand? Earth, we don't give up. We don't surrender. We protect our pack. The leader probably did not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. He saw the fire, controlled and wielded as a weapon. He saw the traps, the tactics, the refusal to simply lie down and die. He saw something he had never seen before, an alien creature fighting with the ferocity and cunning of his own species. The three hunters drew back, regrouping beyond the firewall. They spoke among themselves in their language. Then the leader looked one more time at Ari, at Day One, at the impossible bond between them. He made a gesture with his hand, sharp and final. The hunters turned and moved away into the darkness. They were leaving. Day One could not believe it. They had survived. The hunters had chosen to leave rather than continue the fight. He collapsed to his knees, shaking with exhaustion and leftover fear. Ari ran to him, pressing against him and purring loudly. She was scared but proud. They had faced down her people's enemies together and lived. We did it, Day One whispered, holding her close. We actually did it. But even as relief flooded through him, a new worry formed. If Ari's enemies had found them, rescue might be close too. And when rescue came, what would happen? Would they understand the bond he had formed with this alien child? Would they let them stay together? Day One looked at the fire dying down, at the trap triggers now used up, at the camp that had been their home for 7 days. He had been so focused on surviving, on keeping them both alive, that he had not thought about what came after. Now he had to think about it. Because rescue was coming. He could feel it. The beacon was working. Help was on the way, and Day One had no idea if that was good news or bad news anymore. He held Ari close and watched the alien stars wheel overhead. Somewhere up there, ships were moving. Somewhere up there, his old life was waiting to reclaim him. But down here in this circle of dying firelight on a death world, he had found something he thought he had lost forever. He had found a reason to keep going, a reason to keep fighting, a family, even if it was the strangest family in the galaxy. Whatever happens, Day One promised Ari, I won't let them separate us. I'll find a way. I promise. Ari purred and pressed her small head under his chin. In her own way, she was making the same promise. They were pack. And pack stayed together, no matter what. 3 days on Velros 9 had taught Day One many things. The planet wanted them dead. Every plant had thorns or poison. Every animal saw them as food. The water would kill most species in the galaxy. Even the air was dangerous, full of spores and particles that could damage lungs. But Day One was human. His species had evolved on Earth, another death world. His body could handle toxins that would kill a softer species. His immune system was designed for survival. When he tested the water from a nearby stream with his portable scanner, the device flashed red warning signs. Toxic. Dangerous. Do not consume. Day One drank it anyway. His stomach hurt for an hour, but he did not die. Earth had prepared him for Velros 9. Ari could not drink the water. Her species was tough in many ways, adapted to this nightmare planet. But the water from this region was wrong for her biology. Day One had to boil it first, using metal containers from the ship and his fire. After boiling and cooling, Ari could drink it safely. They fell into a routine. When the orange sun rose and the temperature climbed, Day One worked on the ship's communication system. The distress beacon was damaged, but maybe, just maybe, he could repair it. Ari would scout the area around their camp. She was fast and could blend into the rocks with her color-changing scales. She brought back strange fruits that looked like purple stones and fungi that grew in the shade of larger rocks. Day-Wan would scan each item with his scanner, which was running on its last power cell. Some things were safe for one of them, but not the other. Some things were poison for both. They were building a catalog of what they could eat on this world. Communication between them grew stronger each day. Ari was smart, learning fast. Day-Wan taught her hand signals. Point to the mouth means food. Hand flat means stop. 2 fingers to the eyes means watch or look. Ari taught him sounds. A low chirp meant safe. A high chirp meant danger. A purr meant happy or content. They were learning each other's language without words. On the 4th day, Ari did something new. She drew in the ash near their fire. Her claws made lines and shapes. Day-Wan watched, fascinated. The drawing showed several figures like Ari, larger ones and smaller ones together. Then more figures coming from the side attacking. A fight. The small figures running. Chaos. Your family? Day-Wan asked, pointing to the larger figures. Ari touched the drawing gently and made a sad sound. Then she pointed to herself and made a running motion. Day-Wan understood. There had been a fight between different groups of her people. Ari had run away in the chaos. She had ended up at the space station somehow, probably trying to find safety. Then she had hidden in his cargo bay, scared and hurt and alone. I'm sorry, kid, Day-Wan said softly. He knew what it was like to lose family. Ari looked at him with her big glowing eyes. Then she drew another figure in the ash, taller, walking on 2 legs, human. She drew this figure next to the small figure of herself. Together. Yeah, Day-Wan said, feeling something warm in his chest despite the dangerous world around them. Together. We're together now. That afternoon, Ari fell into a ravine. They had been exploring a rocky area where Day-Wan's scanner detected metal deposits. If he could find the right metals, he might be able to repair the beacon. The ground had looked solid, but it was actually a thin crust over a deep crack in the earth. Ari stepped on it and it collapsed under her. She fell with a cry of fear. Ari! Day-Wan lunged forward but missed her. He looked down into the crack. It was at least 5 meters deep. At the bottom, Ari lay still, a large piece of rock pinning her leg. Day-Wan did not think. He grabbed cable from his equipment belt and tied it to a rock. His broken arm had healed enough to be usable, though it still hurt. He rappelled down the side of the ravine, ignoring the pain in his ribs and the burning in his muscles. At the bottom, Ari was conscious but whimpering. The rock on her leg was heavy, much heavier than Day-Wan could normally lift. He tried anyway. He got his hands under it and pulled. His muscles screamed. His injuries protested. The rock did not move. Come on, Day-Wan growled. He repositioned, getting better leverage. He thought of Ari cold and shivering on that first night. He thought of her fighting the predator to save him. He thought of his sister, and how he had not been there when she needed him. He would not fail again. Day-Wan pulled with everything he had. His vision went gray at the edges. His body felt like it was tearing apart. But the rock moved. Inch by inch, he lifted it high enough for Ari to pull her leg free. The moment she was clear, Day-Wan dropped the rock and fell to his knees, gasping for air. Ari limped over to him and pressed against his side, purring. Her leg was hurt but not broken. She could walk. Getting back up the ravine was harder than coming down. Day-Wan had to carry Ari with one arm while climbing the cable with the other. Twice he almost fell. Twice his grip almost failed. But he made it. They both made it. At the top, Day-Wan collapsed on the ground, his whole body shaking. Ari lay next to him, licking her injured leg. After a few minutes, she crawled closer and licked his face. It was rough and tickled, but it made Day-Wan laugh. A tired, painful laugh, but a real one. Friend, Ari said clearly in human standard language. It was her first real human word. Day-Wan looked at her in surprise. Then he smiled and touched her head gently. Yes, friend. That night, as they sat by the fire, Day-Wan taught Ari more about fire. He showed her how to feed it properly, how to keep it going without using too much fuel. He showed her how to use fire to cook food, making it safer to eat. Ari watched everything with intense focus. Then Day-Wan did something he had been thinking about for days. He took a stick and held it in the fire until the end was burning. Then he pulled it out, creating a torch. Ari's eyes went wide. Fire does not have to stay in one place, Day-Wan explained. We can carry it. We can use it as a tool. He walked a few steps away from the main fire, showing how the torch lit up the darkness. Ari followed, fascinated. For her species, fire was something to fear, a natural disaster that destroyed forests and killed without mercy. The idea that fire could be controlled, carried, and used was revolutionary. Daewon planted the torch in the ground and started a second fire. Now they had two fires doubling their circle of safety. Ari made excited chirping sounds running between the two fires. "Tomorrow I'll teach you how to start a fire yourself," Daewon said. "Not with chemicals, but with basic tools. Every human learns this. Now you'll learn it too." As they settled down for the night, Ari curled up against Daewon like always. But something felt different. They were not just surviving together anymore. They were learning together, growing together. Daewon was teaching Ari human knowledge, and Ari was teaching Daewon about her world, about tracking and hiding and reading the signs of danger. They were becoming a real team, a real pack. Daewon looked up at the alien stars above Velros 9. Somewhere out there, rescue ships were flying their routes. Somewhere out there, his old friend Tae Young was probably still looking for him, refusing to believe he was dead. The distress beacon was almost repaired. Maybe in another few days he would get it working, but a small part of Daewon wondered what would happen when rescue came. Would they take Ari away? Would they say she had to go back to her people? The thought made his chest feel tight. In just a few days, this small alien had become important to him. She was not just someone he was protecting. She was his friend, his pack. "We'll figure it out," Daewon whispered, stroking Ari's scales gently. She purred in her sleep. "When the time comes, we'll figure it out together." The fire crackled and popped, keeping the darkness at bay. In the distance, creatures howled and hunted, but they stayed away from the light. Daewon added more fuel to both fires, making sure they would burn through the night. He had survived much longer than he had expected. They both had. This Deathworld had not beaten them yet. Maybe, just maybe, it never would. Humans were good at surviving impossible odds. And with Ari at his side, Daewon felt like he could survive anything. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more dangers, more struggles. But tonight they were safe. Tonight they were together. And that was enough. The cold came fast and mean. Daewon fed another piece of metal to the fire and watched the small alien shiver. The temperature had dropped at least 40 degrees in the past hour. His breath came out in white clouds. The creature, which he had started calling Ari because of the chirping sound she made, was shaking badly. Her scales had turned a pale blue color, and her movements were slow and clumsy. This was bad. Whatever her species was, they were not built for this cold. Daewon looked at his thermal jacket. It was military grade, designed to keep a human alive in extreme temperatures. It was also the only thing keeping him from freezing to death with a broken arm and multiple injuries. If he gave it to Ari, he might not make it through the night. He watched her shake for another minute, curled up as close to the fire as she could get without burning herself. Her big eyes were half closed. She was going into shock. "Damn it," Daewon muttered. He took off the jacket. The cold hit him immediately, like jumping into ice water. He gritted his teeth and wrapped the jacket around Ari. She looked up at him with confused eyes, making a questioning chirp. "You need it more than me, kid," he said. His voice was already shaking, but the jacket alone was not enough. Ari was still shivering, still fading. Daewon made a decision. He pulled the small alien close to his chest, wrapping them both in the jacket as much as possible. His own body heat combined with the jacket might be enough to save her. It was going to be a long night. As Daewon sat by the fire holding Ari, his mind drifted to his sister. Hyojin had always been the smart one, the kind one. She loved all living things. She had become a xenobiologist because she wanted to understand alien life, to build bridges between species. 5 years ago, she had asked him to be her security escort on a research mission to a frontier world. It was dangerous work, but they would be together. Daewon had said no. He had taken a cargo job instead because it paid better.
He needed the money.
He always needed money. 3 weeks into her mission, there had been an accident. A piece of equipment malfunctioned. Hyojin and 2 other scientists died. If Daewon had been there, if he had been doing his job as security, maybe he could have prevented it. Maybe she would still be alive. He never forgave himself. Now here he was, holding another life in his hands. An alien child who needed him. This time he would not fail. This time he would make the right choice even if it killed him. "I won't let you die," he whispered to Ari. "I promise." Something howled in the darkness beyond the fire. Day One's head snapped up. The sound was close, maybe 30 meters away. He carefully shifted Ari to his lap and picked up his metal pipe. More howls answered the first. They were circling. Day One's heart pounded. He fed more broken ship parts to the fire, making it bigger and brighter. Most animals feared fire. Most animals stayed away from light. But Velros 9 was classified as a class within Deathworld. The creatures here had evolved to be killers. Eyes appeared in the darkness. Glowing yellow eyes, dozens of them all watching the fire. Watching him. Stay back, Day One shouted, standing up. He held his pipe ready. Ari clung to his leg, making scared chirping sounds. The creatures moved closer. In the firelight, Day One could see them now. They were about the size of wolves, but built lower to the ground. Their bodies were covered in rough gray scales. Their mouths were full of teeth that glowed faintly in the dark. One of them rushed forward, testing him. Day One swung his pipe and hit it across the head. The creature yelped and fell back, but two more took its place. They were not going to leave. They were hunting. Day One grabbed a piece of metal from the fire itself, ignoring the heat that burned his hand. He swung the glowing hot metal at the closest creature. It caught the thing across its face, and the smell of burning flesh filled the air. The creature screamed and ran into the darkness. The others paused, uncertain. "That's right," Day One yelled, his voice raw. "Come on, I'm from Earth. We invented fire. We killed bigger things than you before we even had metal." It was stupid to yell at alien predators. They did not understand his words. But his voice, loud and aggressive, made them hesitate. The fire made them hesitate. The pain of their burned packmate made them hesitate. For a moment, Day One thought they might leave. Then three of them rushed at once, coming from different directions. Day One swung his burning metal, hitting one. His pipe hit another. But the third one got past him. It went straight for Ari. The little alien did something Day One did not expect. She hissed, a sound much louder than her size should allow, and jumped at the creature. Her small teeth sank into its neck. The predator tried to shake her off, but Ari held on, her claws digging deep into its scales. Day One brought his pipe down on the creature's head. Once, twice, 3 times. It finally fell, not moving. Ari jumped clear, spitting out purple blood. The other creatures backed away. They had come for easy prey and found a fight. The cost was too high. One by one they melted back into the darkness, their glowing eyes disappearing. Day One stood there, breathing hard, his heart hammering in his chest. His broken arm screamed with pain. His burned hand throbbed. He was cold, tired, and terrified, but they were alive. He looked down at Ari. She looked up at him. Then she did something that surprised him even more than her attack. She pressed her small head against his hand and made a soft purring sound. "You saved me," Day One said quietly. He sank back down by the fire, pulling Ari close. "You actually saved me, you little fighter." Ari curled up against him, her purring continuing. Day One wrapped them both in his jacket again and stared into the fire. His hand hurt where the hot metal had burned it. He would need to treat it, but that could wait until he was sure no more predators were coming. The night was long and cold. Every sound made Day One jump. Every shadow beyond the firelight might be another attack. He kept the fire burning, feeding it piece by piece from his ruined ship. Each piece he burned was a piece he could not use for repairs or signaling. But staying alive was more important than rescue if you did not survive until rescue came. Ari slept against his chest, her breathing soft and steady. Day One realized that her presence was the only thing keeping him sane. If he had been alone, he might have given up. The cold, the pain, the hopelessness of being stranded on a death world with no way to call for help would have broken him. But he was not alone. He had Ari. She needed him. And he needed her. As the sky slowly started to lighten with the dawn of Velros 9, turning from black to dark orange, Day One made himself a promise. He would get them both off this planet. He would find a way to contact rescue. He would survive long enough to get Ari home, wherever home was for her. He thought of Hyojin again. She would have loved Ari. She would have been fascinated by this small alien, so brave and so scared at the same time. Maybe this was his chance to honor his sister's memory. Maybe this was how he could finally forgive himself, by protecting life instead of failing to protect it. "We're a team now, kid," Day One whispered to the sleeping Ari. "You watch my back. I watch yours. That's how we survive this. The sun of Velros 9 rose over the horizon, bringing heat back to the frozen landscape. The temperature would climb fast from deadly cold to dangerous heat in just a few hours. Day 1 knew he had work to do. He needed to find water. He needed to make better shelter. He needed to see if any of his ship's systems could be repaired. But first he needed rest. Just a little rest. He closed his eyes, keeping one hand on his pipe, the other holding Ari close. They had survived the first night. That was something. That was everything. Tomorrow, the real work of staying alive would begin. The ship was dying, and Day 1 knew it. Red lights flashed across every panel in the cockpit. The engine screamed like a wounded animal. Outside the viewport, the planet Velros 9 grew larger and larger, its surface a mix of gray mountains and black volcanic fields. Day 1 pulled hard on the controls, but the ship refused to listen. It fell like a stone through the orange sky. Come on, Day 1 muttered through clenched teeth. Sweat ran down his face. His hands moved fast across the control panel, trying everything he knew. Nothing worked. The engine was gone. The stabilizers were gone. He was going to crash, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The ground rushed up to meet him. Day 1 saw jagged rocks and a field of black sand. He closed his eyes and braced himself. The impact threw him forward against his safety straps. Metal screamed and tore. Something exploded behind him. The ship bounced once, twice, then slid across the rocky ground in a shower of sparks. Finally, it stopped. Day 1 hung in his seat, breathing hard. Everything hurt. His left arm felt wrong, probably broken. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead into his eyes. But he was alive. Somehow he was alive. He hit the release on his straps and fell to the floor with a grunt of pain. The cockpit was filled with smoke and the smell of burning plastic. Day 1 crawled toward the back of the ship, cradling his broken arm against his chest. He needed to get out before something else exploded. The cargo bay door was jammed. Day 1 kicked it once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th kick, it flew open and he stumbled out into the alien air of Velros 9. The wind was hot and dry and it tasted like metal and sulfur. In the distance, a volcano pumped black smoke into the orange sky. Day 1 took 3 steps from the ship and fell to his knees. He wanted to lie down. He wanted to close his eyes and rest. But his survival training from his old military days kicked in. Rest meant death. He needed shelter. He needed water. He needed to check his supplies. He forced himself to stand and turned back to look at his ship. It was a wreck. The engine was completely gone, torn away during the crash. One wing had broken off. The hull was split open in several places. But the cargo bay looked mostly intact. That was when he heard the sound. A soft chirping noise like a bird, but deeper. It came from inside the cargo bay. Day 1 froze. He was alone on this ship. He had been alone for 3 weeks, hauling supplies from station to station. There should be no sounds except the creaking of broken metal. The chirping came again, followed by a scratching noise. Slowly, Day 1 moved back toward the ship. He picked up a piece of broken metal pipe from the ground, holding it in his good hand like a club. His heart pounded as he stepped through the cargo bay door. Inside, between 2 supply crates, something moved. Something small and fast. Day 1 raised his pipe, ready to swing. A small head poked out from behind the crate. 2 large eyes, glowing softly in the dim light, stared up at him. The creature was about the size of a large cat, covered in scales that shifted colors from gray to dark green. It had 4 legs and a long tail. Its face was almost cat-like, but the mouth was full of small, sharp teeth. It was a child. An alien child, alone and scared. Oh no, Day 1 lowered his pipe. Where did you come from? The creature chirped again and pressed itself against the crate, trying to make itself smaller. Day 1 could see it was injured. A long cut ran across its shoulder, crusty with dried blood that was more purple than red. Day 1's mind raced. The creature must have snuck onto his ship at the last station, probably looking for food or warmth. He had been too tired to do a proper cargo check. Now they were both stuck on this nightmare planet together. He looked at the small alien. It was trembling. Its big eyes were filled with fear. Day 1 thought about his sister, Hyojin. She had been a scientist who studied alien life. She always said that all thinking beings deserved kindness no matter what they looked like. Okay, kid, Day 1 said softly, putting down his pipe. I'm not going to hurt you. We're both in trouble here. He moved slowly, trying not to scare the creature more. He found his emergency medical kit in a storage locker. Most of the supplies were for humans, but the basic stuff should work on any carbon-based life form. He hoped. The creature watched him with those big glowing eyes as he sat down a few feet away. Daewon opened the kit and pulled out antiseptic spray and bandages. See? Medicine. For your shoulder. He pointed at his own shoulder, then at the creature's wound. The alien tilted its head, watching him. Slowly, carefully, it took one step forward. Then another. Daewon stayed very still. He had learned in survival training that sudden movements scared animals. The creature came closer, moving like a cat, ready to run at any second. When it was close enough, Daewon sprayed the antiseptic on its wound. The creature hissed and jumped back, but Daewon spoke softly. I know, it stings. But it will help. He pulled out a ration bar from his pocket, the last one he had grabbed before leaving the cockpit. He broke it in half and held out one piece to the creature. It sniffed the air, then carefully took the food from his hand and ate it in 3 quick bites. There you go, Daewon said. He ate his own half, trying not to think about how little food he had left. Outside, the orange light was fading. On Velros 9, he knew from the basic planetary data, the temperature dropped fast at night. Dangerously fast. He needed fire and shelter, and he needed them now. Daewon stood up, and the creature followed him. He gathered pieces of broken metal and torn seat cushions from the ship. Using a chemical fire starter from his emergency kit, he built a fire outside the cargo bay entrance. The flames crackled to life, orange and warm. The creature jumped back when the fire started, making scared chirping sounds. Its scales turned almost white with fear. Daewon realized it had probably never seen controlled fire before. It's okay, he said, sitting down by the fire. Fire is good. Fire keeps us warm. Fire keeps the bad things away. As if to prove his point, something howled in the distance, a long, horrible sound that made Daewon's skin crawl. The creature pressed itself against his leg, trembling. Daewon looked down at the small alien. Then he looked out at the darkening landscape of Velros 9, where shapes were starting to move in the shadows. He was hurt, almost out of supplies, and stuck on one of the most dangerous planets in known space. Okay, kid, he said quietly, adding more fuel to the fire. Looks like we're stuck here together. My name is Daewon. The creature looked up at him and made a soft sound. Daewon. Despite everything, despite the pain and fear and hopelessness of their situation, Daewon smiled. Close enough, he said. We're going to survive this, both of us. I promise. The fire crackled and popped as night fell completely over the Deathworld. Around them, the sounds of hunting creatures grew louder. But in the small circle of firelight, a human and an alien sat together. 2 lost souls finding comfort in each other's company. It was the beginning of something neither of them expected. A friendship forged in fire and survival. A bond that would change both their worlds forever.